fortunate enough to get some big Leafs news today. We're going to start by talking about the Labushkin trade. So let's start with a breakdown of that, Steven. What did you think about it?
I thought it accomplished a couple of things for the Maple Leafs, and Kyle Dubas does like trades like that where they accomplish multiple things. They get to clear out Nick Ricci's cap hit on the books for this season and next year as well, and they also pick up a depth defenseman who brings something to their lineup that they don't have. And that's what Kyle Dubas said when speaking to the media, that he just has something that their defenders right now don't. And that's the ability to play with a bit of a physical edge and just be a real competitor out there.
Yeah, so when we talk about something that the Leafs don't have, to add on to your point, completely agree. I think one thing the Leafs need some serious help on is their turnover game. I looked up a stat, something crazy. The Leafs have the fourth most giveaways in the league this year. And when we look at Ilya Lyubushkin's advanced stats, he's a purely defensive defenseman. And the one place he helps the Leafs more than anywhere is puck control and turnovers. He's in the 99th percentile of defensive zone turnovers, just does not turn over the puck. His turnovers per pass is in the 70th percentile too. The guy knows how to break out, and that's something that the Leafs really need to do. Also, as we've watched the last few games against Montreal and Columbus, which we'll talk about pretty soon, one thing I noticed personally is that the Leafs just had a problem winning puck battles, and that's something that Labushkin does really well, especially in the defensive zone. Couple quick last stats here. Puck battles in the defensive zone are in the 98th to 99th percentile. The guy just knows how to win pucks.
In terms of his puck control, the one thing that I would say about him is that he's not necessarily the most comfortable while handling the puck. He always looks to make short and simple plays. So if the Maple Leafs can complement him with some forward support up high, when he does throw the puck back up ice a bit, he'll be an effective player for them. I mean, we saw Matthews when he was interviewed post-game after the Columbus game, and he just talked about Labushkin's ability to make that short pass, and that's something that I'm sure that he'll look to do on a lot of the breakouts.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need a simple guy to do the simple things. We have a lot of stars who can do the fancy stuff, but gotta get them the puck first. And so I think it's a great asset to have on our back end now. And I think an underrated part of this trade is that we didn't really use many of our trade chips, meaning that there's still more deals to be done before the deadline, and we'll kind of get to where we might go with that later. But I saw you tweet about this a couple of days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, when you said something like the small personal things that Dubas does when he called Dzingel and told him, hey, we're going to waive you. You can stick around in Arizona. Talk a little bit about that and kind of the personal side of things.
Yeah, so there was a poll that The Athletic ran earlier in the year asking the question, money aside, to NHL player agents, where would you recommend your clients to sign? And the Maple Leafs were ranked second, only behind the Tampa Bay Lightning, and of course, back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, Florida weather, no income state tax. It's an awesome place to be. But for the Maple Leafs, obviously, with the Marlies being in Toronto and them having the medical staff, the training staff, all the player development staff, and also Kyle Dubas just showing that transparency and just being honest. I mean, I know it is a business, but it doesn't need to be cutthroat all the time, right? You can just be honest with a guy. If that's what your intentions are going to be, there's no reason to make him be worried or panicked or think that he needs to pack all his stuff up and leave. He can just kind of sit back and wait and say, okay, if I clear waivers, which he didn't do, he would report to Toronto, but he got claimed by the San Jose Sharks. And there was a highlight clip that I saw in his first game with San Jose. He was playing in their top six, and he got absolutely rocked along the boards. So good first game for Dzingel there.
Yeah, so that's kind of funny. But when we continue on with the nitty gritty of this deal, one of the big things was that they cleared up about $2.5 million in cap space with the Nick Ricci going away to Arizona. And when we look at it, I thought originally, before Muzzin got hurt, the trade was to purely replace Justin Holl. And I know you're going to get on your soapbox pretty soon about Justin Holl and his mediocrity, but maybe I'll start it off a little bit and then pass it on to you. When we look at advanced stats for Justin Holl, absolutely nothing stands out. Like when you see his projected WARs, 56%, doesn't do much on the defensive end, contributes absolutely no goals per 60 minutes. He's among the worst in the league at that. The only thing I can see him do is be okay on the penalty kill. What are your thoughts on Justin Holl?
I mean, it's hard to really have a harsh opinion on someone who's just painfully average. And that's what I called him on Twitter the other day, just painfully average. And I mean, when you're playing with a guy like Jake Muzzin, who the last couple of seasons was able to be one of the best two-way defensemen in the entire NHL, it makes your job a little bit easier. But when a guy like that takes a step back, it definitely does expose parts of your game where you're maybe not the most comfortable. And I mean, we know Justin Holl from having held Connor McDavid off the score sheet in back-to-back games last season, and he is good at times, but then he goes through these wild ups and downs where he can either be a reliable guy that can slot in maybe in your 4 or 5 slot, and then there's other times where he's just not playable. And he's going through a stretch right now where he is completely unplayable, and he's been a scratch in back-to-back games. But when Muzzin suffered the first concussion and he was out of the lineup from mid to early January to early February, Justin Holl was actually decent, playing the third most average time on ice by any Maple Leafs defender, and the Leafs outscored their opponents 11-4 at 5-on-5 with him on the ice. But then they play that game against Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle, and they get outscored 5-1 with him on the ice. And even though the underlying numbers look good, you watch that game against the Montreal Canadiens, and it's just so many dumb mistakes that are painful. I mean, he's got a little bit of Jake Gardner syndrome without having all the pros of Jake Gardner, which is not good. But at the end of the day, painfully average.
Yeah. I think if you had to ride with a guy, let's say they do make a move for a defenseman, are you riding with Justin Holl or Travis Dermott on your bottom pair if they're able to find a guy for that right D on the second line?
If they're able to acquire a top 4 defenseman that plays the right side, ideally Labushkin would be playing on your third pair with Rasmus Sandin.
That's right.
I don't mind having Justin Holl as an extra, like a 7th defenseman for playoff time, because you're going to need 7 or 8 guys anyway. But if you're going to make a move to clear out some cap space, because that's what that would be, I would prefer to move on from a guy like Travis Dermott, who has regressed every single season since his rookie year and does not play a special teams this year. And Justin Holl doesn't throw hits or drop the gloves either, but neither does Dermott. And like Angelo, like you mentioned, Justin Holl does play a pretty prominent role on the Maple Leafs' penalty kill, which has been awesome this season. It's been awesome. It's been a real strong suit for them.
Yeah. And so speaking of reassurance come playoff time, they made sort of a random trade for Carter Hutton. Like what does that mean to you guys?
That was a moment where I was getting comments on my YouTube channel of people freaking out. Oh, what does this mean? They're going to move Peter Mrazek now. Carter Hutton under 800 save percentage. Nice move, Dubas. But no. Carter Hutton will never step foot in Toronto or wear their uniform or a Marlies jersey even. That was purely a handshake deal between the Coyotes and the Leafs, where they knew that they were going to be placing him on waivers before the Nick Ricci Labushkin trade had went through, and the Coyotes just didn't want to pay a guy on a one-way deal an NHL salary to play for their American Hockey League team. So they traded him to the Leafs for future considerations, and the Leafs loaned him back to Arizona's American Hockey League team. So he's technically property of the Maple Leafs right now, but they're allowing him to stay in Arizona, and hopefully he stays in Arizona.
Yeah, I was pretty excited at first when they made that Carter Hutton deal, because I originally thought, before I realized how average, actually below average he was, that might have meant they were going to move Mrazek's contract at the deadline and go get like a big defenseman who logs minutes, and not only that, takes up some cap space. But as you mentioned, Carter Hutton is not the St. Louis Blues Carter Hutton that he was before. When you look at his quality starts, it's in the 20th percentile, 7th percentile in excellent starts. Maybe talk to me about his abilities.
That's also only in 3 games,
Sure.
and it's for the Coyotes.
Yeah.
But previous to that, he was in Buffalo. I mean, I don't see him playing a role or anything like that at all. It's just the Leafs doing a favor, basically.